Senator Franzen, welcome to the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. And I want to start by thanking the committee chair, Senator Limmer, for giving us an opportunity to present this topic. Certainly a topic of interest to many over the country as more and more states are grappling with whether to go down the path of legalization for recreational use of cannabis. So with that, I like to begin with testimony and pass it on to my co-author. Earlier this session, as you all know, we introduced Senate File 619 as a bipartisan bill that would legalize recreational cannabis for adults at least 21 years old. This legislation will further decriminalize and regulate cannabis use in Minnesota. The bill will primarily focus on the regulatory framework for responsible oversight of recreational use of cannabis. Back in 2013, Minnesotans and legislators embarked on the debate of whether we would allow for medical cannabis use. And as policy members and members of the public, we participated in a month-long conversation about the merits of legalization of medical cannabis. While our emotions ran high, a bipartisan consensus created a carefully regulated system with safeguards to prevent abuse. As more states legalize cannabis for recreational use, most recently our Midwest neighbor, Michigan, Minnesota has thus far been reluctant to engage in the kind of serious conversations that happened 5 years ago until now. Senate File 619 is receiving its first hearing in this committee today, and I welcome a respectful conversation and debate to address the public concern and the challenges to implementation. Many have asked why I'm carrying this bill, and I answer because it's time to have this discussion in Minnesota. Rarely as a legislature do we have the ability to have a win-win scenario, to tax a product where consumers agree should be taxed and to regulate it to make it safer for consumers. We also have the ability to remove the need for the black market to exist while eliminating the harm it has done to society with an expungement provision. I believe the state has both a public health and a safety interest in regulating and educating all Minnesotans on the risk of recreational use of cannabis. Prohibition has not worked thus far. Regulating cannabis and providing the necessary oversight and legal framework moving forward will reduce, not increase, the access to youth. Dr. Sara Jensen, my Republican co-author and sitting to my right in this bill, and a physician in private practice, acknowledged in our press conference earlier in this session that cannabis may become legal, but it does not mean it's good for you. Senate File 619 seeks to responsibly regulate and address all aspects of cannabis use by prohibiting the use to sale to minors under 21, uphold current law prohibiting impaired driving, uphold the Clean Indoor Air Act, protect employers' rights to keep the workplace safe, and protect landlords' rights to prevent smoking on their property. It also will keep local control to regulate the production and sale in local communities. It will establish rules on the operation of dispensaries, and it will develop a tracking system, seed to sale. And the revenue from taxation will be used to address mental health services, training for police, and public health education for teens about the potential health consequences of cannabis use. We will fund research on mental health impacts and risk factors for addiction and study the effects of cannabis related to potency levels and dosage for safe driving. Finally, we will decriminalize and expunge past nonviolent offenses. I want to encourage, again, a respectful dialogue as we continue to discuss the merits of legalizing the adult recreational use of cannabis, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Franzen, for bringing this bill forward. I don't think I'll readily forget the day that Senator Rest and Senator Franzen came and asked me to participate in this bill. I probably didn't quite realize exactly what we're going to get into. But for me, the issue was basically there was a perfect storm. In November, two political groups achieved major political party status in Minnesota, both on the issue of marijuana. Michigan approved it. In December, the federal agricultural bill approved hemp, and then the other one would be the CBD. We're seeing CBD products sold at pharmacies and grocery stores. So it became clear that we needed to start understanding the issue before us. I think in 2013, opening the doors to medical marijuana was a huge deal. Over the last 2 years, 4 additional diagnoses are now medically eligible, including PTSD, the autism spectrum, obstructive sleep apnea, and dementia. Well, just those two last ones, obstructive sleep apnea and dementia, are exceedingly common. And as the population grows older, we're not going to see less dementia, we're going to see more. And obstructive sleep apnea, I could editorialize on, but I'll just say this. It's a very common disorder. And generally, when the workup is initiated, usually the diagnosis is made. Personally, in the office, I have seen young people come in having been sexually abused because they thought they were participating in maybe a trivial brownie at a party, and with no awareness on their part, Rohypnol had been laced into the product. And so they indeed were, if you will, candidates or at risk for being sexually abused, and they were. I've seen 60-year-old patients come in with mental health issues of anxiety, stress, and insomnia, and a half of a gummy bear an hour before they go to bed has changed their lives. I've seen opiate studies indicate that when THC is used as an alternate, 25% of the people on opiates have been able to get off the opiates. I see alcohol deaths far more problematic than I see any other drug. So to me, it harkens back to the way we've talked about fireworks in this state. We've often focused our thoughts on sales and commercialization, possession, and then use. And I'm not advocating, and I don't support legalization of recreational marijuana at this point in time. But as Senator Franzen told me right out of the get-go, she said, it's time to have the discussion. And for that, I really appreciate the respect to this topic that Senator Limmer and his colleagues have given to it today. So thank you again. But I do think that we need to talk about decriminalizing, if you will, trivial amounts of marijuana. I don't think that we can really know how this issue has affected communities of color, communities of minorities, community of immigrants. And so for me, I'm absolutely interested in that discussion. Lastly, I think Senator Franzen's bill really puts a bright light on the issue of impairment, safety, regulation. And I think in fairness to Senator Franzen, I think everybody should realize that nowhere along the line has the issue been, maybe we can acquire some tax dollars. That's not part of this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jensen. Despite comments by Senator Jensen, we will now give proponents 30 minutes to give testimony for the bill, and then 30 minutes to those that oppose. Senator Franzen, do you have an author's amendment that you were wanting to propose?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do. I have an author's amendment, the A9,
All right.
just to put the bill in the shape we want it.
I believe the A9 amendment is in our members' packets. Senator Pappas moves the A9 amendment. This is an author's amendment. For those in the audience, this gives an author a last-minute chance to put a bill in their as perfect a form as they can before a committee. So we do not debate the merits of an author's amendment. We simply pass it to get it in the form that the author wishes it to be in before we consider it. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the A9 author's amendment say yes. Opposed? The amendment prevails. Thank you.